Alright, so here is a video going through a for loop with an array, which is when it starts to get interesting. So we have this string array called miscellaneous, or misc, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then for I 0 to length minus 1, it's going to, and you'll see why that's necessary, because usually you would do I less than length. But because of this right here, because you're going one bigger, if you would have just done our normal less than length, you would have gotten an out of bounds exception on the very last move. So we're going to trace through and get used to tracing through a loop and seeing what's going on. So the first time, A, B, C, D, E, F is our array in order, and I starts out at 0, but that's before it even goes through. And then if you look at it, it makes a temporary string, which just takes the ith term. So in the first time through, it takes the 0th term. There's the 0, right? If we numbered them, the index, right? There's the 0 term is the A, and it stores it in temp. And then what's it put in the 0 place, but it puts the 0 plus 1 place. So it's going to take B and put it into A. That's what this move right here does. And then it's going to put in the place of B, which is the position 1, it's going to put what you stored in temp. So basically you put the A off to the side, put the B in there, and then put the A back where B was. So now temp is A, I is 0. The second time through, now my I moves up to 1. So when it gets to here, it's going to grab the item in index 1. Well, here's index 1, so temp is still A, but it replaces A's position, position 1, with what's in position 2, and what's in position 2 now is C, so C is going to go up there. You can kind of get a feel for it. The next time through, I is worth 2, and so when I is worth 2, it grabs temp from position 2. So temp from position 2 this time is A again, and then it's going to set that position 2 to be whatever was in 3. So D is going to move up. So we're going to go B, C, D, A, E, F. Okay, and then when we go to position 3, we're going to go, let's see, position 3 will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now it's going to grab position 3, store it in temp, and then it's going to put up, let me see, oh, okay. It's going to put E in its position. That's actually the move it does first. Well, it goes through and does nothing first, but then it's going to put E there and throw A into the position behind it with this move, store temp. Okay, B, C, D, E, A, F, and then 4 is going to go here, and let's see what it does. It's going to grab A again, because now we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's going to grab A. It's going to take F and put it in there. Okay, so it's going to put F there, and then it's going to slap A down in this position right here. And the other stuff's still the same, B, C, D, E. Okay, so then now I was 4, and at the end it gets reset to 5, right? But since this goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So this is, the length is 6, but 6 minus 1 is 5, and it only goes through as long as I is less than that. So it would stop after this. It wouldn't go on, because if it did go on, once again I said, let's say it went on again and I was 5, well, it would look for position 6. but this is position, the last position is position 5, and you get an out of bounds exception. So we don't need the bottom chunk here. It's kind of just there in case you needed it. Okay, and that's the tracing right there. Then we get to finding the errors. So these are pretty cool with for loops. So here on this first for loop, you look at it, think of it like soccer games. Here's the goals scored. All this does is go through your whole list. See how it's listing the entire list? And it says if goals P minus 1 equals 0. So if the previous score is 0, then it's going to say the previous game has no goals. So it expects you to say, to print out 3 times. It does nothing otherwise. So if you look at it, here's a 0. When you got to this item, it should say, it should print out the previous game had no goals. Here's a 0. When you get to this game, it should say the previous game had no goals. And similarly, when you get there. But there's an error here because if you look at it, the very first time through this loop, you would get an out of bounds array, out of bounds exception. Because on the very first time through, P is worth 0 and it looks for position -1. There is no position -1. So how could we fix this? We could set it up similar to the last one where, well, there's 2 ways. You could start at 1 and then it could look at the previous guy. And then I think you'd have to go to the length. Yeah, you'd have to do it go or equals to. So if we're going to correct it, that's the way to do it. Or we could set it up pretty similarly to this guy, to our first one, where you could say, all right, if I am starting at 0, I just need to compare my current one with the one after it. And if it's if the one before it was a 0, then the one after it's going to say the previous game had no goals. I think the best way to do this would just be to start at 1. So we're going to start at 1. And we're going to go through, yeah, I think that would fix it. Because the weird case would be the end. But let's think about if it was set to 1. Okay, set P equal to 1 is our first correction. So yeah, we're going to say the correction here is to set P to 1, because now it goes through and it's here, and it can look at the previous guy equal to 0. If your last one is there, I don't even want to change this, because our last one, if it's 0, you're not going to say the previous game had no goals. So this is the fix. All right. And I like these problems because they're a little, they make you think. You're like, how do I fix that code? All right, let's take a look at this next one. Okay, so the second one, same goals thing. This time it makes a sum variable, integer, outside the for loop. And then it says from n equals 0 to goals length minus 1. The sum plus equals, it's going to add your goals item n. Notice they had to put this. So it actually, with the brackets, goes and accesses the 0 position, and then the 1 position, and then the 2 position. Okay, each time through. And then it prints out all goals. So it expects you to add them up. Now here it's like you're gun shy from the last problem. You're like, oh man, I don't want to go over. But it creates this code right here specifically, creates a off by 1 logic error. Because if you think about it, it's going to stop. See how it's less than? It's going to stop 1 too early. It's going to stop at this position and never add the 2. The last element will not be added. So correction, so that's the error. the correction would be to just make it n is less than goals dot length. Or you could do less than or equal to. You could just throw an equal to in there. So anyway, this first one, it was out of bounds. It looked for, I didn't write this, I said it. Position index -1. Okay. All right, let's check out another one. Okay, so this one is supposed to run through your array of strings backwards. Like if you see it with a minus minus and it starts at the high end and it goes back, you're going to see it's going to print each item, right? Miss J, and then a space. So it's supposed to go backwards. But if you start tracing it, you're going to find an error pretty early. In fact, you'll find it on the very first item because, remember, length, the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Length is a 6. It's how many items are there. So on your very first time through, you're starting with j equals 6, and you go to access the item note at position 6, it's going to go look here. It's going to say array out of bounds exception. And then the reason is it looks for index 6 on the first iteration. Okay, so how can we correct that? Easiest way, just do int j equals misc dot length -1. So just make sure you start at the index and not the length. All right, let's look at the last one here. All right, so this one we start with the A, B, C, D, E, F again, and now we have skip as a new variable. So we make this int skip 1. So remember, our positions, we have 0 through 5 as positions, and length is 6 if we ever use it. So in this problem, we start skip off at 1, and we're going to do this as long as skip is less than misc length -2. So if the length is 6, this is really standing for 4 the first time. And then skip plus equals 2. So it's supposed to go basically every other item. Boom, B, D, F, and then stop. Now there's good protection here. On this, if you're jumping by 2s, that's pretty nice because then you're less likely to be off. But let's see what it does the first time through. System out.print misc skip. Okay, so the first time through, we're going to go in here and we're going to do 1, right? So skip is worth 1, and then it's going to go in here and it'll access B, right? So far so good. So the first time through it'll do a B, and then the next time through, now it's worth 3, so it comes up here to 3, and it gets D. So far so good. And then it's worth 5, but it doesn't get in here because, look at that, they put a little too much protection in there. You can't even access the last one. So this would be an off by 1 logic error. Because of that setting, you didn't get to your last item. Of the array. So that's just a logic error. So how would you fix it? I would fix it by doing the skip less than misc dot length, just like normal. You're not going to go over the edge because this is your iteration thing. It's not your actual items. Okay, there you go.